Today we are going to talk about stable structures and art. A structure is an object that has a shape, size, and purpose. In order to serve its purpose, the structure must be strong and able to hold a load. If a structure is going to be useful, then it must be able to withstand a variety of forces. This means things like buildings, bridges, play structures, and roads are all examples of structures. There are also structures in nature, things like shells, skeletons, trees, or nests. In art, there are also many examples of structures. Things like the stretched canvas of a painting or the base on which a sculpture sits, anchoring it in place. But what about the sculptures themselves? Strictly speaking, a sculpture, while being a three-dimensional object with size and shape, doesn't always fit the true definition of a structure, because in most cases a sculpture is created more as an artistic object rather than as an object that is meant to do something. Even so, we can use sculpture to explore a number of important characteristics of structures in a really interesting way. In order to perform a certain function, a structure must be both strong and stable. To be strong means that it must be able to support its own weight, and sometimes the weight or other force of something else. And to be stable means that it can maintain its balance and be able to stay in one spot, not break or fall down. Both of these things are pretty important for a sculpture too. Now let's think about being stable, basically meaning that a structure won't break or fall down. Before we talk about what makes something stable, do you think that you can recognize a stable sculpture or structure? Let's give it a try. In these two sculptures, which appears to be the most stable? What do you see that makes you say that? While you are looking, take a moment to talk with your family about your ideas. What has the artist done to make their work look stable or unstable? And why do you think an artist would choose to make their work look unstable on purpose? Here we see George Wallace's Apple Pickers and Constantine Meunier's Longshoremen. While these two works have a lot in common, they are both sculptures of standing people and they are both bronze. There are a few important differences. Of the two, my guess is that most people will say the longshoreman looks the most stable. Is that what you said? What is it about this figure that makes us think of stability? Let's take a closer look. The longshoreman is standing with his feet spread apart as wide as his shoulders. This gives him a wide base to distribute his weight. And if we draw a line from his head down to his feet, you can see that his body weight is placed on the center of this base. If you look more closely, you'll see that this figure is standing on a platform of some kind, and that it is uneven. This platform does two things. First, it changes the figure's foot position. You'll notice that the back foot is actually slightly higher than the front, which gives the artist the opportunity to work with a more interesting pose. The other thing this part of the sculpture does is to act as a heavy base. It weighs the sculpture down and gives it a flat, wide, and heavy base so that it doesn't fall over. Compare this to the apple pickers, focusing first on the figure on the bottom. This figure's feet are in a line, one in front of the other. His base is very small, though when we draw a line down from his head, we find that the weight is placed all in the center as well. Take a moment and try out the two different poses to feel the difference in stability for yourself. Stand with your feet wide apart, as wide as your shoulders. Then stand with your feet touching side by side, or in a line like the apple picker. Just for fun, have someone give you a really gentle nudge in each position and see what happens. Did you try it? If you did, you probably found that it was easy to stand with your feet wide apart, and that you fell over really easily with your feet together. You'll notice that the apple picker's arms are outstretched. Did you do the same when you took this pose? This is something that we do almost without thinking when we have to balance on something narrow. Holding our arms out like this helps to spread our weight out a little bit further and makes it a little easier to stay up. Now let's add into the fact that this figure has another person standing on his shoulders, and you will really get the feeling that they could fall over at any moment. Now, the question to ask yourself is, why do some artists choose to make their work appear very stable, while others, such as George Wallace, purposely use instability in their work? The Longshoreman is an artwork that is meant to show us the strength and dignity of an ordinary man. It was created near the turn of the 20th century, at a time where many artists had grown tired of creating work about kings and queens and gods and heroes, and had shifted their attention to the working class people around them. In this case, stability, which can also communicate strength, makes sense. This man is strong, hard to push around, and perhaps a hero in his own way. On the other hand, in the apple pickers we see two figures stretched up to reach a fruit that is almost out of reach. This is not an easy task, as the apple seems to be so high above them, and the artist is trying to communicate the difficulty of reaching it. In this case, it makes sense for the figures to look like they could fall over at any moment. So creating a sculpture that looks stable would not really serve this goal. He wants us to feel how difficult and dangerous this task is for the two figures, that they could fall to the ground at any second. He purposely chooses to use what he knows about stable structures to make an artwork that appears to break all of those rules. One more thing to notice, the sculpture base. In this case, a very large triangular prism has two functions. First, it keeps the sculpture from falling over. It acts as the wide base of the design, and it is also quite heavy, which balances the weight of the figures above. But the artist has been very clever in his design. Imagine how the sculpture might look and feel if the figures stood on a large, solid, square block. Not too unstable. Instead, he used a triangular prism. The weight of the object is the same, but by placing the man standing on a narrow edge, the artist actually increases our sense that he is about to fall. In truth, this sculpture is quite strong and not likely to fall over without some force. It is bronze, which is a kind of metal, and so very heavy. There is also some internal structure that adds strength to ensure that it can support itself. In his construction of the artwork, this artist has carefully balanced the rules of stable structures with the visual appearance of instability. Here is an artwork that can be seen in the gallery's outdoor sculpture garden. It shows a scene inspired by Greek mythology, and it is meant to be dramatic and heroic. While this sculpture shows us a violent struggle between the figure and the snake, it seems like it could last forever. Adding to this feeling is the artist's use of a strong and stable design. The figure has one leg stretched out to the side and is sitting on a large base. If we outline the shape that his body and the base makes, we find a triangle. Based on the rules of stability we've already looked at, we can say that the triangle is one of the strongest and most stable shapes. And because of this, it is very popular for artists to use it when planning their artworks, both in sculpture and in painting. There are two main factors that will make a structure stable: a wide base, something that is bigger at the bottom than at the top, and a lower center of gravity, something that has most of its weight near the bottom and is lighter at the top. We have seen both of these things in the works that we've looked at today. Sculptors have to think about stability when they are creating three-dimensional artworks. They have to make a work that will not fall over when it is displayed, and they use a variety of techniques to make this happen. Sometimes this happens with the design of the sculpture itself, through its shape or the way its weight is spread around, but often it helps by including a base as part of the artwork. We have also seen the ways that sculptors can use clever design in their work to make works that appear unstable for various reasons. Instability can affect how we feel about the moment being shown. It can suggest that the object could move or fall at any moment, and it can add drama or excitement to the artwork. In any case, understanding stable structures is an important part of art making, and art is a great way to explore these concepts in real objects.